Hi, welcome. My name's Fiona from Weekly Sewing Bee, and we're going to make a witch's hat, okay? So I've got some gossamer rather than lace, and I've got some taffeta. Now I know you won't be able to buy this taffeta, and all we need is quite a strong fabric, so yeah, that's fine. Now, okay, so we can measure our head quite easily, can't we? I know. So I need that much to go around my head. That's fine, isn't it? We can do that. Anyone can do that. If we want to use a tape measure, then we can do. I'm going to put a little nick in there. So all we need to know is the measurement from the head, and then we have to do a point. Now, it can be as pointy as you like, although you do need it enough to go sort of over your forehead. So at least 5 inches. That's so it'll stay on. Okay, so that's fine. So we could go like that, or we could go like that. And then we're going to sew up those two ends. So now we've got our point. Now if we take a tape measure and we measure round our head, then we can tap in that number. I suppose it's about 38, I'm not sure. And we can ask for the diameter of a circle. Now, the computer on the search bar will give you an answer, or it will take you to a page where it will give you the answer. So that's easy enough. Or we can fold this shape into quarters, and then we can work it out by folding a piece of fabric into a quarters and then doing it like that. But even if we get the right measurements and we're really careful and we find a plate exactly the right size, it can still go terribly wrong. So what I plan to do is make a circle, not sew it up, and to prove the point, my circle is going to be a bit like that at the back. And this is just so that we don't have to do that complicated measurement and calculation and then get it all wrong, because it does happen. Alright, so that's what I'm going to do. I've nicked my bit of cloth so that I know that this is the right size, and I am going to go for quite a pointy hat. So all I have to do is fold that in half to that point and then cut along to a point. Now if this is slightly wonky, then it just means that we'll get a nice dramatic curve in the cloth, which is fine. Sorry, I'm having trauma. Put that there. Yeah, I've got quite a big bit of cloth to work with, and sometimes I do cut them to sort of size manageable chunks so that I can work with them, but it is just a waste of cloth. So a fairly straight line up to the point that we want, and remembering that these first 5 inches we shouldn't really go in that much, because otherwise we won't get it on the head. So if we went like that, then it wouldn't stay on easily, it would just sort of perch on. Now I was watching Harry Potter the other day, and as you do, and Professor McGonagall, who is, well, quite a strict professor, she had a sort of headband sewn into her witch's hat, so that I suppose it could stay on and she could concentrate on filming. So yeah, you know, there are things to do. Okay, so I've now folded this into 4. That jar's not very heavy, so I'm going to use my pen mug. And I'm going to fold this now into 4, so that I can work out how large I need to cut my circle. Of course giving myself hem allowance, and of course not worrying about if they meet or if they overlap. So I'm just putting a couple of nicks in there. Okay, that to the side, that's my point. I then either draw it in or I can guess it, and then I can do my flap. So this is a complete circle, so I'm going to have to trim it. I've got quite a large rim. Of course that will look smaller because of my head allowance and my hem allowance. And then these two nicks, I can just fold that over so that I've got less to concentrate on. I can just do that. So what I'm left with is like a toilet seat. I always call it that. And I am going to find the widest point, and I'm going to cut that in half. So I'm going to need 2 of these as well so that I can hem it, just so it looks as nice as possible with the minimum amount of work. And sometimes when you're hemming something, it does make it easier. It just, you know, it gives it a bit of rigidity and everything else like that. So that's one of them done. Just fold the fabric up again, and then we can do the other one. So, as you know, the next step is to sew the 2 outside ridges together. And sew the long seam of the point of the hat. So it's not going to be hemmed in the inside of the hat, but it is going to be hemmed in the rim. But you're not going to see the inside of the hat. Okay. So I should have done this at the same time. I just, do you know, first sew of the morning, sometimes I'm a bit flaky. But we've got it now. Okay, so that's that done, that's that done. And what I'm going to do, which is easy enough, I'm going to take some strips of this and I'm just literally going to sew them into the hems. And I think what I'll do is the hem at the back, I will have a bit dangling down as well. So it's easy enough. Fold it into half, fold it again, and fold it again. Now I must admit, these little bits of fabric, I have 1 metre of the taffeta, and I have used a good chunk of it really. You'd be surprised how much I've used. And the gossamer I have 1/2 metre of, and I'm going to use probably 2 2-inch strips. So, and they can be as roughly cut as you like. In fact, you could spend a good ½ an hour deliberately fraying the edges. Actually, I'm going for 3 just in case I need one. Just ignore me. Alright, so that's that done. I've got the sewing machine. Got the rim. Right side to right side. I'm going to put that together. Obviously I haven't cut the top one, which is fine. I'm going to take one of my floofy bits, and I'm not going to worry if it's the right side or the wrong side. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that selvage up so that it's on the wrong side, and I'm going to put the majority of it on the inside. So when I turn it inside out, it's going to be on the outside. So yeah, I know. That's that simple. And obviously I'm going to sew up my ends as well, which I'm going to cut when I get a bit closer. So I don't know how much you need to see of this. If you want, every now and again you can put a little crease or little fold in there just so that it sort of flares out of the gossamer, but you need to keep the rim of the hat quite straight, so yeah. And then just pull the bottom. What I'm doing is also I'm making sure that I can see the bottom and I can see like a little flash of orange, so I know that it's attached. There we go. So I've got my right side and my little flash of orange. Okay, a little bit of sewing to do and I'll be right back with you. Hi, welcome back. Okay, so what have we got? We have got our rim here with our ends and our tassely bits at our ends. We have got our point with our tassely bits in the seam. Okay, now the next question really, and it's a question you can ask yourself, is do you want the seam on the outside and then to cover it with gossamer? I know it's going to be more comfortable. Or do you want the seam on the inside, which is going to look nicer, but if you're wearing it for a long amount of time, it's going to be a bit uncomfortable. So yes, you know, it really depends. If it's for a child, then I would say put the seam on the outside and then cover it with gossamer. That sounds fair, doesn't it? Okay, now I started pinning. This is just because it's so I can concentrate on what I'm saying, because sometimes it goes a bit, I'm concentrating on sewing, I can't talk, which I don't mean it to do. So yes, anyway, so I'm done with that. Also what we need to know is how much we've got sticking off the end, or is it not long enough to meet in the middle, because we really want the seam to be in centre of that gap or that overlap. So you know, there is a lot to be assessed by where we're having that. Okay, now I'm going for an outside seam. So what I've done is I've turned my hat inside out. If I was going, no, I'm going for an inside seam, so I've turned my hat inside out. If I was going for an outside seam, then I would turn my hat the right way round. Yes, so I'm inside out and I'm going inside the seam. Okay, and we've got the rim right way around. Okay, and I've got my end of my seam to the end of my hat, because, not that I'm a goody two shoes or anything, but luckily mine meet up. But you do need to know, and it's not be all and end all if it doesn't meet up, and it's not be all and end all if it overlaps, because we've taken that into account. Okay, now all I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch the 2 layers of the rim to the 1 layer of the hat. And again, I could put in a row of gossamer if I wanted to. Now, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this once, then I'm going to turn it over, turn it inside out, and then I'm going to sew it again. Okay, this is because I'm not going to get particularly upset if I miss a bit. And I'm also making sure that I don't catch a bit as well, because that would be even more infuriating. Like missing a bit, I could just sew it back in, catching a bit, and then I can sew it. I have to unpick it, which I hate. It just seems such a waste of time, doesn't it? Okay, so yes, I've now got to the bit that's unpinned, tucking everything in, making sure I'm catching all 3 layers of fabric. Now I know that it would be a lot neater if I cut these 2 layers of fabric for the rim at the same time, and I'm kind of well aware of that. It's just one of those things, you know, if that's the worst thing that ever happens to me, that I'm not particularly worried. Okay, so just pick up my hat, tuck everything out of the way, as clean, well they say clean work surface, don't they? Well, clean station, clean bits is good. So let's tuck that back under there and start. I could see that I'd stopped sewing the hat and I was just sewing the rim, so I know. There we go. I believe I've got everything now. And there we are. All I've got to do is just let this sewing machine do it. There we go. So now what I've done is I've tucked everything into the hat. This means that there's nothing to catch, and I've got one layer of rim. Oh, yes. Let me get myself sorted. Okay. Now, if you do get yourself in a pickle, well, we could just use a pin, couldn't we? You know, there's no reason why not to. There we go. So what I'm doing now is, just for ease, I'm sewing it from the far end, and then I'm sewing the last little gap towards me. Yeah, it's all about knowing your limitations. Now my limitations is I'm kind of left-handed, so I kind of want to sew left-handed, but I don't think there is such a machine. I suppose I could turn it round, but so I do get in a bit of a pickle. Okay, now all we have to do is untuck it. We can have a little check just to check that we've got everything in. Now if you were sewing your rim round this side, then we would need to just tie a piece of gossamer around. Oh, poke yourself in the eye, that's not good, is it? And yeah, we have a very distinctive, very much original and a completely our own witch's hat that I can guarantee nobody else will have. And yeah, anyway, I know it makes no sense to me either. Okay, so what we do is we measure our head and then we measure our rim, and we don't worry about sewing these two bits up, so that we can then not worry if we haven't got our calculations 100%. So yes, and there is a little bit of an overlap. I hope you can see that. There's an inch there where it's too big, so I obviously didn't do it properly. And if in doubt, hide it all with ribbon. Alright, thank you ever so much for watching. My name's Fiona. Please like, share and subscribe.